cinema is the most technologically reliant of all the arts. It is also the most technologically innovative. In little over a century, it has constantly refined and reshaped not only its means of expression, but also its means of reception. Before the Lumiere brothers premiered their works in 1895, film entertainment came in the form of Edison's kinetoscope. Yet, while both Edison and the Lumieres showed real events, recorded in real time via a single uninterrupted shot, the difference was that with their projector, the Lumieres afforded the public a shared experience. Ever since then, cinema has been a collective event. However, while cinema has continued to develop new techniques to engage with the audience, the latest wave of technology is altering the industry so swiftly and so profoundly, it begs the question, can cinema survive the move from Hollywood to Silicon Valley? Like all the other arts, cinema tells a story, and the primary function of any story is to express the human experience. Storytelling is as old as civilization itself, and while mankind has practiced oral storytelling for some 300,000 years, the earliest evidence of visual storytelling does not come until much later. These images, discovered along northern Spain's Cantabrian seacoast, were painted some 40,800 years ago, during the Upper Paleolithic Age. While in history the oral storytelling predates the visual, in cinema it is the visual that predates the spoken word. For many analysts, the technological breakthrough of synchronized sound marks the single biggest shift in the medium's development. This is not true. While the earliest films were silent, they lasted only as long as the single strips of films themselves, about 50 seconds. These early films present single scenes as uninterrupted space-time events. The single biggest shift in the medium's development occurred when a space-time event was interrupted. That interruption came with editing. The earliest form of editing was, in fact, an in-camera special effect. Perhaps that is the best way of understanding what editing does. It is a special effect that alters our space-time experience. The earliest form of editing occurred when filmmakers stopped the celluloid from cranking through the camera, stalled the event, and then resumed filming when a new action had begun. Here, pioneer filmmaker Alfred Clark directed Queen Mary, portrayed by actor Robert Thomé, to step up to the block and, as the executioner prepared to wield his axe, instructed Thomé to freeze, stopped cranking the camera, replaced Thomé with a dummy, and then resumed filming just as the axeman delivered the fatal blow. These early films were meticulously planned exercises and illustrate the conscious efforts of pioneer filmmakers to step beyond the space-time continuity of the theatrical tradition. All this was before the invention of the editing bench. In cinema's earliest days, cuts were known as joins. And that naive term helps pin down the primary function of editing. Made by Orr W. Paul in 1898, Come Along Do is the earliest surviving example of a film made up of more than one shot. Only the first shot has remained intact, but two stills showing the second scene illustrate a narrative continuity. Here is G.A. Smith's Grandma's Reading Glass, the earliest surviving example of the close-up insert. It works because while the joining interrupts the space-time continuity, Smith ensures the content of the shots is sufficiently similar so audiences can grasp the continuity between the shots. Whether a wide or a close-up, each shot has its own expressive capability, and it is editing, the joining together of separate images that marks the single greatest development in the history of cinema. A comprehensive study published on December 4, 2013 by the U.S. Library of Congress estimates that 75% of all films made between 1912 and 1929 have been lost. The figures for the years 1895 to 1912 are even greater. As a result, it is impossible to discern when the first joins or cuts were made and who made them. In fact, it was not until the arrival of sound that the term editor was even used. Prior to this, the term had simply been cutter. In 1929, MGM's then head of production, Irving Thalberg, coined and bestowed the term film editor on Margaret Booth, who, perhaps more than any other editor, helped shape and sharpen Hollywood's editing style.
I'll beg, I'll borrow, I'll steal, but I must be with you always, always.
Booth began her career as a joiner for D.W. Griffith, and in his book The Parades Gone By, historian Kevin Brownlow noted that when Booth was working on Orphans of the Storm, she had to manually match the print for the negative without the aid of edge numbers. It was very tedious work, said Booth. Close-ups of Lillian Gish would go on for miles. What was once a menial and painstaking analogue task is now done instantly and effortlessly through the advent of digital technology. Where once editing was done on moviolas and Steenbecks, it is now done on computer. This change occurred when, in 1989, the Avid One was introduced at the National Association of Broadcasters Convention in New Orleans. Based around an Apple Macintosh II computer, this was the first non-linear editing system. Within 4 years, the first feature-length film edited on the Avid system was released. And 3 years after that, The English Patient became the first feature film completed on the Avid system to receive the Academy Award for Best Editing. Where once footage had to be processed in a lab and then viewed as rushes before being approved for editing, digital workflow has eased the difficulties of those stages. For instance, when David Lean went to mount Lawrence of Arabia, rather than using the Cinecittà studios where Ben-Hur had been made, he insisted on shooting on location in the Jordanian desert. The filming of this legendary shot took place over 2 days, June the 12th and 13th, 1961. And because of the extreme remoteness of the location and the lack of portable facilities, no one, not even Lean or his director of photography Freddie Young, saw any of the footage they had shot until they returned to London some 4 months later. Now with digital facilities, a script can be pre-visualized on computer, shot on a Red 1 MX camera, played back instantly via on-set monitors, have the source format uploaded as Red Code RAW, and edited on Final Cut Pro, all on the same day. Which is precisely what happened when David Fincher went to direct The Social Network. That The Social Network's editors, Angus Wall and Kirk Baxter, received the Academy Award for Best Editing while using Final Cut Pro is not without significance. The very first editing machine, Moviola, was invented by Iwan Serurier in 1924, and for the next 3/4 of a century, both it and the Steenbeck flatbed editing suite, invented by William Steenbeck in 1931, had the monopoly on editing systems. The same went for cameras, with Panavision and the Arri Group holding control. But as technology has advanced, new manufacturers are increasingly prepared to domesticate what was once considered the exclusive domain of industry professionals. Final Cut Pro was initially unveiled in 1998 at the National Association of Broadcasters Convention in Los Angeles. Aimed squarely at those working within the film business, Final Cut Pro evolved through 7 incarnations until, in 2011, Apple decided to make the product, now Final Cut Pro 10, available on its Mac App Store. Many within the industry bemoaned the vast changes that made the latest version so user-friendly, even a novice could quickly master its operations. But really, the complaint was that amateurs now had access to editing software that was industry standard. A similar phenomenon occurred in the early 1990s with the improvement of digital cameras. With the transition from celluloid to digital single-lens reflex cameras are helping not just change the landscape of the film industry, but also level the playing field. Short subjects, documentaries, and even theatrically released feature films are made with DSLR cameras. And as independent filmmaking morphs into an ever-increasing mass, it would appear that the Hollywood studios are in danger of being outsourced and replaced by domestic digital cities. Films can now be made on smartphones, edited on laptops, and most crucially of all, screened globally and instantly.
Blue John Canyon. Guidebook says 4.5 hours to the big drop rappel. I aim to take 45 minutes off that.
Mammy.
History has afforded the jazz singer the accolade of the first feature-length motion picture with synchronized sound. But until its arrival in 1927, editing patterns were based solely on the visual capability of each shot. For this reason, not only did great experimentation occur, but editing rates became startlingly swift, and the interplay between shots grew ever more sophisticated. Whereas the earliest films ran for 50 unedited seconds, by the mid to late 1920s, the average shot length in a silent film had dropped to about 5 seconds. But when sound was joined to the image, that rate slowed to just over 10 seconds. Here are but 3 examples of highly influential filmmakers whose work spanned the silent and sound eras.
Помним о часе смертном.
Wenn einer dabei drauf geht, im Beruf gestorben, schön, geht in Ordnung. Aber zwischen dem, den die Kriminalpolizei sucht, und zwischen uns, da ziehen wir einen dicken Strich. Da ist Schluss. Jawohl. Wir üben unseren Beruf aus, weil wir existieren müssen. Aber diese Bestie hat kein Recht zu existieren. Die muss weg. Die muss ausgerottet werden, vertilgt. Ohne Gnade und Barmherzigkeit.
Looks bad, Rainbow. Looks bad.
A difficult thing to handle. I mean, any knife. I mean, if you use a pen knife, or a pocket knife, they wouldn't belong to you. A butcher's knife.
Alice, cut us a bit of bread, will you?
Knife. What's that other knife? An exact knife. A knife is a dangerous thing. If you're careful of a knife, you come up against a knife.
Third act beginners, please. Your call, Miss Beardy.
Good morning, sir. You're out bright and early this morning.
Could you use a pound note, brother?
What's the catch?
I want to borrow your cap and coat.
Yeah, wait a minute. What's all this? What's the big idea?
I want to make a getaway.
Do a bunk?
Yes.
What have you been up to?
I'll have to trust you. There's been a murder committed up on the first floor.
In recent years, software has been developed to calculate a film's average shot length. Cinemetrics is an open source application developed by Yuri Tsivian and Gunnar Sivians that allows viewers to estimate a film's average shot length. The average shot length of just over 10 seconds for a Hollywood picture remained steady from the late 1920s until the mid-50s. 1953 saw another introduction that impacted heavily on the visual capability of each shot. The Robe was Hollywood's first film to be made in the new Cinemascope format. Developed to combat the arrival of television, the studios invested in widescreen technology. With the added lateral spaces, filmmakers found they could now fit more information into the frame, thereby reducing the need to cut from one angle to another. While many directors viewed this development as a cumbersome gimmick, for others, it made little difference to their storytelling. Here are statistics from three masters who dealt with the new format with little fuss.
I wasn't long, was I?
Not at all, Mrs. Dietrichson.
Hope I've got my face on straight.
Perfect for my money.
Neff is the name, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 F's, like in Philadelphia. You know the story.
What story?
Philadelphia story.
What shall we do? Can we get on a train?
Ja, the rest is on the spot.
I don't want to stay here and wait.
Listen. We could go to
Varikino.
The new widescreen format altered the way in which directors composed their frame. And perhaps the best example of this is the use of close-ups. In fact, in the Cinemascope photographic technique, a handbook published in 1955 by 20th Century Fox, cinematographers were advised that with the advent of Cinemascope, the close-up had been consigned to the past. But the real reason for this was because, as David Bordwell has pointed out, Cinemascope stretched the image, thus causing distortion on the close-up. As a result, Cinemascope technicians recommended cinematographers keep the camera at a safe distance from the event. The issue was solved with Panavision developing new lenses, and by 1961, Akira Kurosawa was able to show that a long lens did not affect the integrity of the close-up. But what really consolidated the style was the wave of British directors who went to Hollywood in the late 1970s and early 80s. Despite having begun their careers making commercials for television, these directors, especially Ridley Scott and Tony Scott, showed that in the widescreen format, a close-up on a long lens dramatically pulls the face out from the surrounding space and thus restores the star's primacy. Today, filmmakers as disparate as Wong Kar-wai, who started his career in television, and Michael Bay, who cut his teeth on television commercials, are devotees of the long lens close-up.
Be careful, Charles.
Kane.
Pull your muffler around your neck, Charles.
Kane, I think we shall have to tell him now.
Yes. I'll sign those papers now, Mr. Thatcher.
While different lenses afford directors different visual choices, whatever the shot length, in the analog era, filmmakers were severely restricted by the length of roll a camera could carry. Alfred Hitchcock experimented with the long take in Rope, but was limited to the standard 10 minutes of film. Today, with digital filmmaking, a take can go on a lot longer.
Open it.
Harkening back to the 50-second uninterrupted space-time events of the Lumieres, Mike Figgis's Time Code was Hollywood's first feature-length film to be shot entirely in one take. Note that while Figgis's film is in one take, there are 4 stories, each filmed simultaneously. 4 specific spaces with one continuous time. When 2 years later, Alexander Sokurov made Russian Ark, his approach was to have one continuous space, but with numerous suggested times. The unspecified historical era of the Romanov dynasty, in which the events unfurl. Our awareness of the impending Bolshevik revolution that terminated the Romanov dynasty. The 96 minutes it took for the film to be shot. And our time, now, as we are watching Russian Ark.
This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Because of its dependency on dialogue, and because of the greatly reduced screen size, television drama impacted not only on cinema's compositional style, but also its cutting rates. In 1954, Franklin J. Schaffner directed a live broadcast of Reginald Rose's play 12 Angry Men. There, Schaffner's average shot length was 13 seconds, several seconds slower than the theatrical average. However, when Sidney Lumet, whose career had also started in television, adapted Rose's drama to cinema, he decelerated Schaffner's television rhythm even further, to an average shot length of 15.9 seconds. Television greatly changed the presentation of audiovisual entertainment. Another great change can be traced to April 19, 1979, when the world's first multiplex opened at the Eaton Centre in Toronto. The multiplex greatly facilitated Hollywood's aim to not only launch its product on thousands of screens simultaneously, but also the studio's needs to secure a more rapid financial return. In his book, A New Pot of Gold, historian Stephen Prince documents that decade in which the studios became targets for global media and communications companies. And in the years since, home entertainment systems have not only increased in size, but the sound systems have improved enormously as well. With ever-burgeoning technology, we can now view film on a variety of formats and devices. Cinema, television, laptops, tablets, and smartphones. The cutting rate in Hollywood cinema is now the fastest it has ever been, with some films having an ASL of just over 2 seconds. The visual impact that a 1,100 square foot screen has on the human retina no doubt accommodates this increased rate. Another reason is Dolby Stereo's directionally enhanced sound system.
What's going on up there?
And the third reason for Hollywood's shortened ASL figures is due to the dominance of the action genre. For the last 3 decades, it has been the preferred genre amongst Hollywood's largest demographic, 16 to 24-year-olds. While the number of tickets sold at the North American box office has marginally increased over the last 30 years, a recent but growing phenomenon across all demographics is the proliferation of peer-to-peer activity via new communication platforms. But, compared to experiencing it in a cinema, what impact can an action sequence have on a viewer engaging with the film on a tablet or an even smaller mobile device?
That was amazing. I was also watching, I love new media, and I'm watching Lawrence of Arabia. It's just awesome. The cinematography is just, I'll tell you, to really appreciate it, you have to see it in the widescreen. Oh yeah, those are camels. That's cool.
One wonders how filmmakers will adapt to these burgeoning innovations. Will they continue to go for spectacle, or will they go for intimacy? Will we see more close-ups to facilitate films being viewed on smartphones? With the reduced screen size, will cutting rates slow? As consumption habits become even more sophisticated, Hollywood studios and its filmmakers have to face these facts.
What? The game's on tonight! I've got to call my VCR! Emergency! Emergency! I've got to call my VCR!
The arrival of television changed the presentation of cinema's content. For decades, when a film was broadcast, commercial breaks interrupted Hollywood's carefully constructed narrative lines. Then, with the arrival of VHS and DVD, those narrative lines became non-linear. And with mobile devices, multitasking is making space for a multilinear audience. This audience, referred to now as screen agnostics, view video content by whichever means is most convenient in a given moment. While audiences now exist in a multi-screen environment, analysts are asking whether Hollywood can combat the emerging platforms.
GE Black Daylight television receivers give you greater eye comfort.
Just as it eventually realized with television and VHS, cinema will survive if it accepts the new technologies. For the last number of years, it has been said that the best screenwriting is to be found not in a theatrically released feature film, but in long-running episodic television. With The Knick, Steven Soderbergh is just the latest in a growing list of high-profile directors: Martin Scorsese, Neil Jordan, Jane Campion, and Michael Mann, who now move freely between the two arenas. But then again, this man was doing precisely that back in 1955. So what is new?
Power is a lot like real estate. It's all about location, location, location. The closer you are to the source, the higher your property value.
On February the 1st, 2013, Netflix, the new studio on the cyberblock, premiered House of Cards. It screened neither in theatres nor on television, but online. All 13-hour-long episodes were uploaded simultaneously for instant streaming. The director of the first 2 episodes of Season 1 was David Fincher. Like Michael Bay, David Fincher began his career directing commercials and pop videos. And in that time, he developed an instantly recognizable visual style.
Come on, girls, do you believe in love? 'Cause I got something to say about it, and it goes something like this. Strike a pose. Strike a pose. Freedom! 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 You got to give what you say. Freedom! Freedom!
Oh, man. Honestly, have you ever seen anything like this?
Shh, it's okay.
Before I kill you, I'm going to throw your baby out the window.
You will be investigating thieves, misers, bullies, the most detestable collection of people that you will ever meet. My family.
Because of the advancement in digital compression, Fincher did not have to sacrifice his visual style in moving to the small screen. He still deploys high-contrast, low-key lighting, and has maintained his preference for green and blue-tinted color temperatures. Using an aspect ratio of 2:1, his average shot length on House of Cards was 4.5 seconds. This is slower than his theatrically released films, all of which have been shot in 2:35. It would appear then that in addressing the reduced screen sizes, filmmakers can continue to adapt not only their cutting rates, but also their aspect ratios, which in turn will impact on their use of close-ups. The widest ever opening for a Hollywood film is 4,468 screens. Netflix premiered House of Cards on 33 million. Such was the show's impact Microsoft is developing programming for its Xbox Live platform. Amazon has invested in original content, and YouTube is building its own production facility to create new programming. Cinema has not experienced a revolution like this since the Lumieres took celluloid out of the kinetoscope and projected it onto the screen. Where Edison had an audience of one, witnessing a single space-time event, the new studios will have millions of viewers in millions of different spaces at millions of different times. Cinema expresses the human experience in the form of space-time events, and it is about to embark on its most exciting journey yet.